Meet Zodra, an Ornn Support main who hit EUS Master. But this is not just Ornn Support. He has a special new build that turns Ornn from a full tank frontliner into an item crafting, CC dodging, healing support. In a meta full of enchanters and healers dominating bot lane, our player followed the classic motto, if you can't beat them, join them. When he couldn't climb with his tank build, he swapped to a special healer build, which also has some great damage, and of course huge engages for fights. With Ornn Support you also get thousands of gold worth of stats whenever he upgrades his teammates' items, making him a super high value support pick. And this guy is very special, having some very unique minion tricks to surprise enemies and get early kills. And we also found a huge Ornn bug that will affect worlds if Riot don't fix it before the tournament starts. Let me show you how it works. But first, let me tell you about a League of Legends app that can literally help you win more games. This is Porofessor, a League of Legends overlay app that's just like having a challenger support by your side. And unlike some supports, Porofessor will never roam and leave you behind. It's always with you, helping, in-game and out of game. From automatic rune selection in Champ Select, custom builds right in your in-game shop, giving you the best build with no need to tab out, summoner spell tracking, showing all of the enemies and their spells, and whenever someone uses one you can click on the in-game overlay to start a timer, which exactly tracks the cooldown, with this feature also syncing up with the other 8 million Porofessor users. And of course there are loads of other features, like stats analysis after game, pro builds, jungle camp timers, and so much more. So before this ad is over, and Chime reaches the Nexus, you can download it right now from the link in the description. All it takes is a couple of clicks, and right away you'll have all of these new tools to win more games. And best part, it's free, so there's no downside to giving it a try. Make sure you download it now. Back to Zodra and Ornn Support, a player with a story that started all the way down in Bronze. In Season 5, after hitting level 30, Zodra quickly dropped into Bronze, a huge distance from Master Tier where we see him today. Right away, his friends at the time started to make fun of him, and so of course he had to get out at all costs. Funnily, his solution to this was not to pick a carry champion, or even a carry role. He became a Thresh main, and after struggling his way out of Bronze, he then started shooting up in rank in Support. By Season 6, he had hit Platinum with a 55% win rate on Thresh, then making his first Thresh montage. But he only got into off-meta in Season 7. He loved off-meta picks, like all of us, but more than that, he loved off-meta ways to play the game, not following the standard rules of League, and instead finding weird mechanics that he could use to get wins. The first of these was when he would play Scion Support, and Suicide super early on to Dragon to help his jungler get it for free. By Season 8 he had a new trick, playing Support Anivia, and using his wall to block minion movement, and set up really good waves for his teammate, and even finding a way to use the wall to block Blitzcrank Hook, using this crazy trick to stop the hook from working, and remove one of Anivia's worst matchups. The tricks continued in Season 9 where he became a flex queue player, actually hitting Challenger in this mode, playing solo. As he climbed higher and higher in this mode, his champions like Thresh, Anivia and Scion got much harder to play. He would throw out a hook and the enemy would easily dodge it every time, so he needed to find a new support he could pick against the best players and never miss a skill shot. This champion was Ornn, with his huge AoE knockups on his E and ultimate, the ability to create terrain with his Q to block enemies, and even the bizarre width of his W that would hit anyone in melee range. Ornn was perfect. Zodra at this point was still stuck in Diamond in solo queue, but when he started playing Ornn, he would just beat players that were better than him, and in some matchups, like against hook supports, he could use his W to dodge CC, blocking the hook, and make the enemy champion completely useless. So then in Season 12, Zodra finally hit Master with a classic tank Ornn build in Support, and then it was all ruined by the durability update. Tank supports were pretty much removed from the bot lane meta, and Ornn was one of the victims. So this was when Zodra realised the dark path he must take, to turn Ornn into a hybrid, tank, healing Enchanter, and clearly it paid off, hitting Master once again and becoming the number 12 Ornn in the world, the only one in the top 100 who even played it in Support. So I guess we can call him the number 1 Ornn Support. And at level 1 he immediately starts doing one of the coolest tricks I've ever seen in League. So minions in this game have collision, which can sometimes block players, and this annoys a lot of people, but one thing that Riot have made sure of is that players can never force minions to do anything special at level 1, as that would really break wreck the game. So minions are ghosted as they come out of base, similar to the summoner spell, but they're able to walk through champions until they reach the lane. But unfortunately, Riot have never met Zodra, and he has found a way to get around this. This is his minion trick, a way to split up the first wave, so that one of his minions always gets to lane first, dying before the enemies can even get to it. They miss the XP, which causes a lot of confusion at level 2, so Zodra can get a level up, and enemies just don't, giving him an easy way to get early kills. The way he sets this up is really impressive. Zodra walks out of base, covering for an invade, and then at 40 seconds he walks back to his lane, standing in the center of this platform by his tower, taking his Q and aiming it at this little flower. It's very precise. When the minions arrive at 1 minute 10 seconds, he throws out a Q which splits up the first minion of the wave from the other 5. This is the minion that dies first. He follows his wave to lane, using Q again at the next tower to split the enemies up even more, and then again at the outer tower, leaving one minion to go on by itself, and the rest having to walk around his pillar. The minion arrives to lane, getting focused by the 6 enemy minions, and this means it'll die before the enemies in bot lane even notice. This is so powerful because everyone knows it takes 9 minions to get to level 2 in bot lane, so when the enemies are counting minions getting ready, they'll think they're about to get level 2 and can start fighting, but then your 9th minion dies and they just don't get it because of this trick, so they won't know what's happening until it's too late. Already at level 1, Ornn Support looks pretty good. It also works on the other side of the map with a different setup, the same timing but a new place to stand and also aim your Q, again using his Q at each of the towers, so then when he finally gets to lane, he's just waiting for this ticking time bomb to go off. Ideally he should also throw another Q at the enemy backline minions, just to keep the wave even, otherwise the wave will quickly push into him, and they might struggle to get level 2 first. So then at level 2 the fight can start, using his Q to poke the enemy, and taking his E to get the huge AoE knockup. This ability is very hard to dodge in bot lane because of how wide it is. He also maxes this ability first in most lanes, because it does a really high amount of AD. Taking his W at level 3, he now also has 400 gold, using it to buy Ruby Crystal with his passive that lets him shop in the lane, so immediately he has more power than the enemy support in a fight. Ornn is surprisingly annoying to play against in bot lane, because every time he uses his Q, the pillar will stay there for 4 seconds, so this gives him a lot of time to engage with E if he wants to, or just leave it there for pressure. The Q only has a 9-second cooldown, and the pillar is there for 4, so the enemies are pretty much always under pressure from this ability. His ideal combo is Q to slow, E to knock up, and then W after that, auto-attacking the enemy to proc the brittle for extra damage, and igniting to get an early kill. This is the safest combo for bot lane, and it's a bit different to top lane. By the way, he can also take W at level 2 if he's against a hook support, as this makes them completely useless for the whole lane. Another great advantage Ornn has as support is in this clip, where his AD carry bases to buy some items, but Ornn doesn't have to. He can just buy his items using his passive shop in the lane, which gives him extra time to roam and make plays. He doesn't have to waste any time running back to base, and he's always able to stay at maximum strength, spending his gold as soon as he gets it, never having to join a fight with loads of gold in his pocket. Then at level 6, Ornn gets his huge AoE knockup slowing ultimate. This ability in top lane is good for chasing enemies down, but in bot lane it just destroys so many champions. He pulls ult through the enemy bot lane to land a slow, then headbutts it right back into them to knock up and stop any of their escapes, following up with Q to set up another knockup with his E. Immobile enemies have no way out, and even enemies with dashes are still going to struggle to dodge all of this CC. You are very likely to be able to get a kill at level 6. The best way to ult is around this distance, so not quite maximum range, but not close range either. This distance also gives him enough time to catch up to the ult, and follow up with the extra CC. He can also do this trick, ulting one enemy and then swapping target to surprise them. This Tristana gets ulted to get knocked in the air, then knocked in the air again, hit with W, and then her jump is ruined by Ornn's brittle auto attack. I'm pretty sure the auto attack even cancels her jump, since the W sets up a knockback, but either way the damage is too much for her to survive. And Ornn Support is one of those pigs where if you die to him once, you're going to die to him over and over again until you lose your tower and lose the lane. It's a very snowbally pick. With such a great long range ultimate, of course Zodra has to roam. Whenever he has a window to leave lane, you can join your jungler or mid laner and use it for a long range kill. While you're roaming, you can even use this W trick to clip into some of the walls and extend the range of your warding. The best example is this one on the dragon pit. His main goal, however, is to set up a really good dragon fight, since his ultimate knockup is so strong in a choke point. If enemies start it, then he can engage for his team. He aims his ult to try and predict enemy movement, following up on the knocked up targets afterwards. But here's a great example of Ornn also being a peel support. This fight is looking like a tiny bit of a disaster. Ornn's teammates are all low health and stuck in the pit, with an ulting Swain coming right in to clean them up. But Ornn's ultimate knocks the Swain up into a full chain CC and brittle, peeling and giving his teammates time to burst the Swain to death. Clearly Ornn is not just an engager, and since this video is about him healing teammates, we should show how he plays as more of an Enchanter. You may have noticed that he takes Glacial Augment. This is because of how well it works with Ornn's ultimate, giving you and your teammates more time to reach the enemy and follow up on it. But that's not the only reason. The Glacial Slow also increases based on how much heal and shield power you have. So when Ornn buys Redemption, this slow goes up from 30% to 44%, which may sound small, but it's a big difference when you stack it on top of the rest of Ornn's CC. So the healing synergy is built in from his runes. The healing isn't only useful to keep his teammates alive, but also to get more slows, more CC, and thus be better as a peeling support as well. On top of this, Zodra also often buys Anathema's chains, which is great for making him even more tanky against a fed enemy, but also improves his CC, again making him better at peeling. This item increases your CC duration on your target, giving them 20% reduced tenacity, which gets even worse when you add on his brittle that extends CC duration. Up to this point, Ornn's been pretty normal as a support. He's got some cool tricks and a new build, but level 13 is where he completely changes. Ornn now becomes a gold generator for his team. At this level, his mythic item gets upgraded to a masterwork item, and each level he gets after this, he's able to upgrade another mythic item for his teammate. Each of these upgrades has a rough gold value of about 1,000 gold worth of additional stats. And on top of this, Ornn for some reason also gets 4% bonus HP, armor, and magic resist every time he upgrades one, making him even tankier just for free. So the later the game goes, this support keeps increasing your gold lead by a crazy amount, which is never a bad insurance policy to have in solo queue. He focuses on upgrading his most fed teammates mythic first, and then any of his carries. And don't forget that your upgrade resets the item cooldown, so for example if your AD carry uses Gale Force before a big fight, upgrading it will reset the cooldown, giving them an extra dash to use in this really important moment. Ornn is a fighting champion, so teamfights we all know are quite simple. If Ornn's team is behind, he can ult from far away in a side lane and try and set up picks, or if he's ahead he wants to get into enemies' faces and get a big ult, buying time for his team to dive. This is his most impactful part of the game. Earlier I mentioned a game-breaking Ornn bug that is likely to affect worlds if RIOT don't fix it. This bug involves Ornn's ultimate and the slow that it gives. Ornn in pro play is one of those champions you see get picked, and often even the worst teams start to win lots more games for seemingly no reason. Well, the bug that we have found is that Ornn ultimate with the first cast is meant to slow depending on how far it travels. So if you hit the enemy from the furthest distance, they're meant to be slowed about 40%, and this should give you more time to catch up to them, whereas if you ult in melee range, they only get slowed by 10%, making it a bit easier for the enemies to escape if you're already on top of them. The problem is that none of this works, and Ornn's ultimate always slows for the maximum amount, regardless of how far away he is. The percentage slow this is scales depending on level, so it's different at level 6 compared to 11 and then 16. But because of this bug, the champion is much better at engages than he really should be, and so I'd say RIOT should probably fix this. And here's one funny, maybe useless tip that you can use. Ornn can W through a wall just enough to get into a hex portal, letting him get a surprise escape from the pit, or maybe even get a flank onto enemies. Giving this pick a rating is surprisingly hard, and one of the reasons for this is that Zodra is not the best at playing macro, which is something he also admitted during our interview. When you play a support, roaming and making plays is one of your main jobs. All of the challenger players do it. But Ornn as a champion is directly against this, being quite slow early game, and also just loving getting XP, because of how he loves getting to level 13 to get item upgrades. And this immobility continues later into the game. Just like any tank support in solo queue, if you get a bad engage, or go in too far, you are going to die in that fight. So you do get punished for any mistake that you make, unlike a champion like Janna or Soraka, who can sit back safely and still contribute. I believe that these macro problems, and the mobility of the champion, are the main reasons why Zodra is not yet Grandmaster or higher. But the pick itself has a very low base skill requirement, with your ult and E-Knockup being as good as most engaged supports, and your upgrades being much more valuable than pretty much any other support's passive. So in general, it's a solid pick that I would say not a single player has perfected, so who knows how much better this pick can be. For his healing, tanky Ornn build, it starts off quite standard. Steel shoulder guards, buying early ruby crystal in lane to get easier fights, into his mythic first item for the tankiness. Even Shroud is another good good option as well, being much cheaper. Then in getting boots, of course going for tank, into redemption for the healing, and also the extra glacial augment slow. Anathemas is good here as well if one of the enemies is fed, reducing their damage and letting you CC them for even longer to shut them down, or even Frozen Heart if you're against lots of auto attackers. Then buying a rare item, Vigilant Wardstone. It's very cheap and Ornn has a special interaction with it. His passive tank stats that he gets from upgrades are multiplied by this item instead of just added. The maths is complicated, but basically it's just very good on Ornn. Knight's Vow if he needs to protect a teammate, Mikhail's for another healing option and to remove a big CC, or any of these tank items are great as well if you need to be more of a frontline. For his Ornn Support runes, this glacial page is his favourite, and the most interesting part to me is Ghost Porro, which he thinks is very strong and underrated. After your ward dies, it spawns, and even after the Porro dies, it gives you a lot of lingering vision, so even after the enemies kill it, they can still be seen, giving you extra information inside Fog of War that enemies won't know you have. Also taking attack speed as well to make his brittle easier to proc in lane. Zodra has a Twitch, link is in the description if you want to see more Ornn. If you love off-meta supports like this and want to see some more cool tricks, then check out our Anivia support video to learn about this other player's crazy story. And thanks again to Porofessor for sponsoring this video. I love the app, I find it really useful, so make sure you download it from the link in the description. Thanks so much for watching.